My name is Leona Caldwell. I'm 34. On December 18th at 6:47 p.m., I was standing in my parents' kitchen holding a printed email I'd sent 3 weeks earlier, watching my father slam his fist on the granite countertop hard enough to make the wine glasses jump. "You don't get to withdraw," he said. His voice was low and controlled, the way it got right before he cut someone out of his life. "I told Bob Henriksen you were reviewing the reserve analysis. I told the broker your name carries weight in this market. You think I can just call them back and say my daughter changed her mind?" "I didn't change my mind, Dad. I never agreed to review the Michigan House file in the first place." I held up the email, dated November 27th, 11:43 a.m. Subject line: RE, Vacation Property Documentation, Formal Withdrawal. "I told you in writing I couldn't be involved. You kept using my name anyway." My mother touched his arm. "Richard, she's just stressed from work. Leona, honey, your father's worked so hard on this new chapter." "I'm a senior documentation risk analyst," I said, keeping my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking. "When a lender sees my name attached to a file, they assume I've verified the reserves, the debt disclosures, the source of funds. If I haven't actually reviewed those documents, and something goes wrong, that's my professional reputation on the line." My father's face went red. "Your professional reputation? Everything you have, I gave you. The connections, the credibility, the credibility I built reviewing files for 8 years," I said. "The connections I maintained by being honest about what I could and couldn't verify. You don't get to spend that like it's your money." That's when my sister Delaney walked in from the living room, champagne glass in hand, Christmas music playing behind her. She looked at my father's face, then at me, then rolled her eyes. "God, Leona, can you go one holiday without making everything about you?" Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. My father pointed at the door. "Get out." I stared at him. "What?" "You heard me. You walk away from this family when we need you. You don't get to walk back in." He pulled his phone from his pocket, opened his contacts, scrolled to my name. I watched him hit the screen. Delete contact. "You want to protect your precious reputation more than you want to help your own father? Fine. You're better off without us anyway. And we're definitely better off without you." My mother's hand was still on his arm, but she wasn't stopping him. She was smoothing his sleeve, the way she always did when he was angry, making it comfortable for him to stay angry. "Richard," she said softly, "it's almost Christmas." She made her choice. He looked at me like I was a stranger. "I'll have someone box up your things from the guest room. Don't come back here. Don't call. You're done." Delaney sipped her champagne and said nothing. I left. I drove home to my apartment in Chicago, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I didn't cry. I kept thinking about the documentation I'd seen 2 months earlier, before I'd formally withdrawn. The contractor debt my father hadn't disclosed. The credit line he'd drawn down to $180,000 when he'd told the lender he had liquid reserves of $240,000. The way he'd structured the purchase to look like he had clean financing when the reality was so much messier. I'd flagged it all in an internal memo to myself. Never sent it, just documented it, the way I'd been trained to do. Let me take you back 12 years, to the afternoon my grandmother, Mildred Caldwell, taught me the most important lesson I'd ever learn about family. I was 22, fresh out of college, working my first job as a documentation specialist at a small regional lender in Chicago. My starting salary was $38,000 a year. I was reviewing mortgage files, checking for missing disclosures, inconsistent income documentation, undisclosed liabilities. It was detail work, boring to most people, but I loved it. I loved finding the thing that didn't match, the number that didn't add up, the signature that looked just slightly wrong. My grandmother lived in a small house on Hawthorne Street, 20 minutes from my apartment. Every Sunday, I'd drive over and we'd have lunch. She'd make egg salad sandwiches with too much paprika, and we'd sit on her porch and talk about everything. She smelled like lavender hand soap and peppermint tea. That particular Sunday, I was upset. My father had asked me to review a loan application for one of his business associates, someone who wanted to buy commercial property. He told the associate I'd take care of it, meaning I'd overlook some inconsistencies in the income documentation. I'd refused. My father had called me ungrateful. My grandmother listened to the whole story, then she set down her sandwich and looked at me with those sharp blue eyes. Leona, I'm going to tell you something your father never learned. Your name is your asset. Not your money, not your family, not your connections. Your name. Once you let someone else spend it, you can never get it back. But he's my father, I said. And I'm his mother, she said. And I've watched him use people's good faith like currency for 40 years. He'll use yours too, if you let him. Don't let him. She took my hand. Her fingers were thin and cool. Promise me, little star. When someone asks you to compromise your integrity for their convenience, you document everything, and then you walk away clean. No guilt, no apology. Clean. I promise, Grandma. Good girl. She squeezed my hand. Now I'm going to tell you something else. I've been setting aside money since you were born. Small amounts. Nothing your father knows about. When I'm gone, it's yours, not for college, not for a wedding, for freedom. For the day you need to walk away from something that's costing you more than you can afford to pay. I didn't understand then. I was 22. I thought family meant safety. 2 years later, my grandmother died of a stroke in her sleep. She was 79. The funeral was small. My father gave the eulogy and cried, and I believed his tears. At the reading of the will, she'd left her house to my father and $15,000 to me. My father had smiled and said, "That's Grandma, always fair." I'd hugged him and said thank you. I didn't know she'd made other arrangements. Quieter arrangements. Arrangements she'd specifically designed to activate only if my father did exactly what she'd predicted he'd do. For 10 years after that funeral, I built my career carefully. I moved from documentation specialist to senior analyst. I developed a reputation for being thorough, fair, impossible to pressure. Lenders trusted my name on a file. Brokers knew if I'd reviewed the reserves were real. My father occasionally asked me to take a look at deals for his friends, and I always said the same thing: I'll review it properly, or I won't review it at all. He'd stopped asking 5 years ago, until the Michigan house. My father had decided, at 68, that he wanted a new chapter. A vacation property on Lake Michigan, something impressive, something that would prove he was still vital, still successful. He'd found a house for $680,000. Beautiful place. White colonial with a wraparound porch, private beach access, mature trees. The photos looked like a magazine spread. The problem was financing. His debt-to-income ratio was high. He'd been using the family credit line aggressively for business expenses that hadn't quite panned out. His liquid reserves weren't as strong as they looked on paper. He needed the deal to appear cleaner than it was. So he'd told the lender I was consulting on the transaction. He'd implied I was reviewing the financial documentation, verifying the reserves, providing professional oversight. He'd dropped my name in conversations with Bob Henriksen, the bank's senior VP. Bob and I had worked together on 3 commercial deals. Bob trusted me. My father knew that. He'd weaponized it. I found out in late November when Bob called me directly. "Hey Leona, your dad mentioned you're helping with the Lake Michigan purchase. I just want to confirm you've seen the reserve documentation. We're showing $240,000 liquid, but the sourcing looks a little scattered. Can you verify?" My stomach had dropped. "Bob, I haven't reviewed anything. I'm not involved in this transaction." Long pause. "Your dad said you were consulting." "He said that without asking me." Another pause. "Okay, thanks for clarifying. I'll need to go back to the file with fresh eyes." I'd hung up and immediately emailed my father. Formal withdrawal. Dated, time-stamped, explicit. I cannot and will not provide professional consultation on your personal real estate transaction. Please do not use my name or imply my involvement in any communications with lenders, brokers, or other parties. He'd never responded to the email. Instead, he'd kept going. I'd heard through Delaney that he'd closed on the house, that he'd told people at Thanksgiving dinner about our family's new Michigan place, that he'd mentioned my input had been valuable in structuring the deal. I'd let it go. I told myself it was done, the house was closed, my name would fade from the narrative. Then December 18th happened. Then he'd deleted my contact from his phone and told me I was done. I spent Christmas alone in my apartment. My phone didn't ring. No texts from my mother, no memes from Delaney, no forwarded jokes from my father's assistant. The silence was total. On December 26th, I went back to work. I sat at my desk in the lender's office on Northwest Avenue and reviewed documentation for a mixed-use development in Evanston. I caught 3 undisclosed liens and a forged tax return. I documented everything and sent it up the chain. My supervisor thanked me. The deal was restructured. My name stayed clean. On January 9th, my father showed up at my office. I was in the lobby getting coffee from the machine when I heard his voice behind me. Leona. I turned. He was wearing his navy suit, the one he wore for important meetings. His face was set in that expression I knew too well. Disappointed authority. I need to talk to you, he said. I'm working. It'll only take a minute. He glanced at the receptionist, then back at me. Unless you want to have this conversation in front of your colleagues. My hands tightened on the coffee cup. Conference room B is empty. We walked down the hall in silence. I left the door open. He closed it. The lender's asking questions about the Michigan house, he said. No preamble, no apology for December 18th, just straight to his problem. Bob Henrikson's office called. They want updated reserve documentation. They're saying the sourcing doesn't match what was represented at closing. I told you in November I wasn't involved. I know what you told me. His voice had that edge. But I also know you talked to Bob. You said something that made him go back and look harder at the file. I told him the truth. I told him I hadn't reviewed the documentation. And now he's questioning everything. My father stepped closer. I need you to call him. Tell him you misspoke. Tell him you did review the reserves, you just forgot because you were handling multiple files. I set my coffee down on the table, carefully. You want me to lie to a senior lender I've worked with for 6 years. I want you to fix what you broke. I didn't break anything, Dad. You used my name without permission. You misrepresented my involvement. That's not on me. Everything you have I gave you, he said, and his voice was rising now. Every connection, every opportunity, every door that opened for you, I opened it. And this is how you repay me? By sabotaging my future? The receptionist walked past the glass wall of the conference room. She glanced in, looked away quickly. I'm not sabotaging anything, I said. My voice was quiet, flat. I'm protecting my professional reputation. That's what you taught me to do. You just didn't think I'd do it against you. His face went dark red. You're selfish. You've always been selfish. Your grandmother spoiled you, made you think you were special. But you're not. You're just another analyst in a building full of analysts. Without my name behind you, you're nothing. Something inside me went cold and still. I looked at him and I thought, I will document this. Is there anything else? I asked. He stared at me like he'd expected me to crumble. When I didn't, his expression shifted to something ugly. Your mother's heartbroken. Delaney thinks you've lost your mind. You're tearing this family apart. I'm not tearing anything apart. I set a boundary and you decided it was worth disowning me over. That's your choice. You'll regret this, he said. When you're alone and you realize what you gave up for your pride, you'll regret it. He left. The door clicked shut behind him. I sat in that conference room for 15 minutes, hands flat on the table, breathing slow. Then I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. I documented the conversation word for word: time, date, location, witnesses, everything. 3 weeks later, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I was at home making dinner when my phone buzzed. I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, I listened to the message. Ms. Caldwell, my name is Richard Pruitt. I'm an attorney with Pruitt and Associates. I represent the estate of Mildred Caldwell. I have some documents that require your signature. Please call my office at your earliest convenience. The matter is time sensitive. My grandmother had been dead for 12 years. I called the number the next morning. A receptionist put me through to Mr. Pruitt immediately. Ms. Caldwell, he said. His voice was warm, grandfatherly. Thank you for calling back so quickly. I realize this must seem unusual given the time that's passed since your grandmother's death. But she left specific instructions that certain documents were only to be released under particular circumstances. What circumstances? She was quite specific. The documents were to be held in trust until such time as your father attempted to use your professional reputation for his personal financial gain, and you formally withdrew your involvement. She predicted this would happen. She wanted to ensure you had the resources to protect yourself when it did. I sat down. She predicted this? 12 years ago? 14 years ago, actually. She established the trust 2 years before her death. She updated it annually. The final version includes very specific triggers. He paused. Ms. Caldwell, your grandmother was quite thorough. She documented your father's pattern of behavior going back 30 years. Business associates he'd misled, family members he'd leveraged, professional relationships he'd exploited. She waited for him to do it to you because she knew that was the only way you'd believe it. My throat was tight. What's in the documents? I'd prefer to discuss that in person. Can you come to my office? I'm located at 847 Dearborn Street, 4th floor. I have appointments available this week. I met him 3 days later. His office was small, neat, filled with old law books and framed diplomas. He was in his 70s, white hair, kind eyes. He shook my hand and gestured to a chair. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, he said. She came to me in 2010 and said she wanted to create a protective trust for her granddaughter. She said her son would eventually attempt to compromise your professional integrity, and she wanted you to have ammunition when that day came. He opened a file on his desk. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name written in my grandmother's handwriting. She asked me to give you this first, he said. Then we'll discuss the additional documentation. I took the envelope. My hands were shaking. I opened it in my car, sitting in the parking garage, engine off. Inside was a letter. 3 pages, handwritten, dated 2 months before my grandmother died. I read it twice before I could process what it said. My dearest Leona, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and your father is doing exactly what I knew he would do. He's used your name to smooth over a financial transaction that won't hold up under scrutiny. He's asked you to compromise your professional standards to protect his interests, and when you refused, he's cut you off emotionally while still expecting you to fix the mess he's made. I'm sorry I couldn't stop this while I was alive. I tried to teach him differently. I tried to show him that integrity isn't expensive. It's the only thing that retains value. He never learned. He'll never learn. Do you remember the Sunday afternoon when I told you about protecting your name? You were wearing that blue cardigan with the buttons missing. You looked so worried. I held your hand, and I called you Little Star, because that's what you've always been, small and bright and constant in a family that mistakes volume for value. I've been preparing for this day since you turned 20. I knew your father would eventually test you. I knew you'd pass the test and he'd punish you for it. The original trust documents are with Mr. Pruitt. His office is at 847 Dearborn Street, 4th floor. The copy I've left you isn't complete. It's just enough for you to know I'm telling the truth. Inside the file, Mr. Pruitt will give you copies of 18 financial transactions where your father misrepresented his involvement or resources, 1994 to 2012. Witness statements from 3 former business associates documenting his pattern of leveraging other people's credibility. A ledger showing the true state of his reserves and liabilities as of my death. A separate account in your name containing $127,000, the remainder of what I set aside, invested carefully. Documentation of my prediction, written in 2010, describing exactly what your father would do to you. Don't show this to anyone yet. Not your mother, not Delaney, not even Mr. Pruitt beyond what's necessary. Wait for the right moment. Your father will create that moment himself. He always does. You are not selfish, little star. You are not ungrateful. You are not the problem. You are the one person in this family who learned that love doesn't mean letting someone spend your integrity like loose change. All my love, always. Your grandma. P.S. The money is yours to use however you choose, but I'd suggest you keep it quiet until you need it. Your father has a way of finding out about assets he thinks should be his. I sat in that car for 40 minutes. I read the letter 4 times. Then I went back upstairs to Mr. Pruitt's office and said, "Show me everything." He did. 18 transactions, 30 years of documentation. My grandmother had been tracking my father's behavior since before I was born. She'd collected statements from 3 men he'd burned in business deals. She'd documented the times he'd promised one thing and delivered another. She'd written predictions in 2010 about what he'd do to me, and every single prediction had come true. The account in my name held $127,000. She'd started with the $15,000 from her will and invested it carefully through Mr. Pruitt's firm. 14 years of compound growth. The last document in the file was dated 6 months before she died. It was a single page, handwritten. When Leona withdraws from Richard's manipulation, when he cuts her off, when he tries to force her to choose between family and integrity, that's when she'll understand. That's when she'll be ready. Give her everything. Mr. Pruitt looked at me across the desk. Your grandmother asked me to wait for the right moment. She said you'd know when it came. Have you been asked to compromise your professional standards recently? I told him everything. The Michigan house, the misrepresentation, the withdrawal email, December 18th, my father showing up at my office. He made notes. Then he said, "What do you want to do?" "I want the truth documented," I said. "I want it on record. I don't want revenge. I just want to make sure that if this gets worse, if he tries to damage my reputation further, I have proof of the pattern." "That's wise," he said. "I'll prepare a formal record of disclosure. If your father attempts to involve you in any future transactions, or if he misrepresents your involvement publicly, you'll have grounds for legal action." We spent 2 hours going through the documentation. He made copies of everything. He gave me a sealed file to keep somewhere safe. "Your grandmother was very clear," he said as I was leaving. "She wanted you to have the choice she never gave your father, the choice to walk away clean." I drove home with the file on my passenger seat. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell Delaney. I didn't call my father. I just waited. 6 months passed. Spring turned to summer. I kept working, kept reviewing files, kept building my reputation. My father didn't call. My mother sent 2 text messages I didn't answer. Delaney blocked me on social media. In July, I got an email from Bob Henriksen. "Leona, I wanted to give you a heads up. Your father's Michigan property is under review for loan fraud. We've discovered significant discrepancies between the reserve documentation he provided and his actual liquidity at the time of closing. There's also evidence he continued to represent your involvement after you withdrew. I've been asked to testify about our conversation in November. I wanted you to know this isn't coming from me. It's coming from the federal audit team. They found the pattern on their own." I wrote back, "Thank you for the heads up. I have documentation of my formal withdrawal if needed." "That would be helpful," he replied. "I'll pass your contact to the investigators." 2 weeks later, I was interviewed by a federal banking investigator. I provided my withdrawal email, the notes from my father's January visit to my office, the timeline Mr. Pruitt had prepared. I answered every question calmly, specifically with timestamps and documentation. The investigator thanked me and said, "You did the right thing, Ms. Caldwell. We see a lot of family pressure in these cases. Most people cave." "My grandmother taught me not to," I said. In October, the Neepville Chamber of Commerce sent me an invitation to their annual holiday networking event. It was scheduled for December 12th at the Riverside Convention Center. Cocktails, dinner, award ceremony. I'd been nominated for the Young Professional Achievement Award by 3 lenders I'd worked with over the years. I RSVP'd yes. I didn't know my father would be there until I walked into the ballroom and saw him standing near the bar, laughing with a group of business owners. He was wearing his navy suit. My mother stood next to him in a silver dress. Delaney was checking her phone. The room held maybe 200 people: business owners, bankers, city council members, real estate developers. String lights wrapped around white columns. A jazz trio played near the stage. Round tables with burgundy tablecloths filled the space. I checked in at the registration table. The coordinator smiled and said, "Ms. Caldwell, congratulations on the nomination. You're at table 7, right up front." Table 7 was 15 feet from the stage. Table 12, where my father sat, was directly in my line of sight. I watched him see me. I watched his face change. He said something to my mother. She turned. Her expression went carefully neutral. I sat down at my table between Marcus Chen, a commercial lender I'd worked with on 4 deals, and Linda Vasquez, a broker who'd referred me clients for 3 years. They both congratulated me on the nomination. "You've saved my clients probably $500,000 in bad deals over the years," Marcus said. "You deserve this." The cocktail hour passed. Dinner was served. I ate salmon and roasted vegetables and made small talk with my table. I didn't look at my father, but I heard him. Table 12 was close enough that when the conversation paused, I could catch pieces of his voice. He was telling someone about his new place in Michigan, how well the investment was performing, how he'd structured the financing carefully with help from some excellent advisors. I sipped my water and said nothing. The awards ceremony began at 7:30 p.m. The chamber president gave a speech about community, growth, integrity. He announced the Young Professional Achievement Award category. There were 3 nominees. My name was last. Leona Caldwell, Senior Documentation Risk Analyst, has built a reputation over the past decade for thorough, uncompromising review of financial transactions. Her work has protected lenders, borrowers, and investors from millions in potential fraud. She's known for one thing above all: if her name is on a file, the documentation is clean. I saw my father's jaw tighten. I won. I walked to the stage, shook hands with the chamber president, accepted a glass plaque with my name engraved on it. I gave a 30-second speech thanking my colleagues and mentors. I mentioned my grandmother once. "She taught me that your name is your only permanent asset. Protect it." When I walked back to my table, my father was staring at me. The ceremony ended. People stood, mingled, moved toward the bar and dessert tables. I stayed at table 7, talking to Marcus about a new mixed-use development he was considering. My father appeared at my elbow. "Leona." I turned. "Dad." "Congratulations," he said. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's quite an achievement." "Thank you." "I was just telling Bob Henriksen how proud I am." He gestured toward the bar where Bob stood with several other lenders. "All those years supporting your career, it's wonderful to see it pay off." My mother touched his arm. Delaney stood slightly behind them, looking uncomfortable. I met my father's eyes. "Actually, Dad, I'm glad you're here. There's something I've been meaning to ask you." His smile held. "Of course." People were starting to notice. Marcus had gone quiet beside me. Linda was listening. "Last November, I sent you an email withdrawing from any involvement in your Michigan house purchase. Do you remember that email?" His smile faltered. "Leona, this isn't the time. It's dated November 27th, 11:43 a.m. I stated explicitly that I couldn't and wouldn't provide professional consultation on your personal real estate transaction. Did you receive that email? My mother's hand tightened on his arm. Honey, maybe we should discuss this privately. After I sent that email, I continued, my voice calm and clear, did you continue to tell the lender that I was consulting on the transaction? My father's face was going red. You're making a scene. I'm asking a question. Bob Henriksen called me in November, asking me to verify reserve documentation. He said you'd told him I was helping with the deal. Did you tell him that? Bob Henriksen was walking toward us. 3 other lenders followed. Leona, my father said, his voice low and dangerous. You need to stop this right now. Did you update the lender when I withdrew? I asked. Did you disclose that I was no longer reviewing the file? Did you mention that to anyone in your conversations about the property? I don't have to answer these questions. Actually, you do, said a voice behind me. I turned. Richard Pruitt stood there in a dark suit, holding a manila folder. Because the federal banking investigators have those same questions, and unlike Ms. Caldwell, they have subpoena power. The color drained from my father's face. Mr. Pruitt opened the folder. I'm Richard Pruitt, Ms. Caldwell's attorney. I represent the estate of Mildred Caldwell. I've been asked by federal investigators to provide documentation relevant to their review of the Lake Michigan property transaction. People were gathering now. 30, 40 people, moving closer. The jazz trio had stopped playing. I have here, Mr. Pruitt continued, a formal withdrawal email dated November 27th. I have phone records showing Mr. Richard Caldwell continued to communicate with lenders after that withdrawal, implying his daughter's ongoing involvement. I have reserve documentation showing significant discrepancies between represented and actual liquidity. And I have a rather remarkable letter from Mildred Caldwell, written in 2010, predicting this exact scenario. My father's hands were shaking. This is a private family matter. No, sir, Mr. Pruitt said. This is a federal investigation into loan fraud. Your daughter's professional reputation was used without her consent to facilitate a transaction that's now under review. She withdrew formally. You continued anyway. That's not a family matter, that's misrepresentation. Bob Henriksen stepped forward. Richard, is this true? Did you keep using Leona's name after she withdrew? My father looked at Bob, then at the crowd, then back at me. You did this. You sabotaged me. No, I said quietly. You did this. I documented everything the way Grandma taught me. I protected my name. You spent it anyway. That's on you. My mother's face had gone pale. Richard, what is he talking about? What investigation? The house is under review, my father said. His voice was rough. There were some questions about the reserves. Nothing serious. Leona's making it sound worse than it is. The reserve documentation shows you had $180,000 in liquid assets when you represented $240,000 to the lender, Mr. Pruitt said. You also failed to disclose $47,000 in contractor debt. Those aren't questions, Mr. Caldwell. That's fraud. Someone in the crowd said, Jesus. Delaney was staring at our father. Dad? Is that true? My father rounded on her. You don't understand how these things work. The house is fine. The investment is solid. They're investigating you for loan fraud, I said, because you misrepresented your finances and used my professional credibility to make the lender comfortable with a deal that shouldn't have closed. My mother pulled her hand away from his arm. You told me Leona was helping. You said she'd reviewed everything. She was helping, until she decided her career was more important than her family. I decided my integrity was more important than covering for your lies, I said. That's not the same thing. The crowd had gone silent. Marcus stepped closer to me, a subtle show of support. Linda put her hand on my shoulder. Bob Henriksen shook his head. Richard, I've known you for 20 years. If you'd just been honest about the reserves, we could have structured something that worked. But you lied, and you used your daughter's name to do it. I didn't lie, my father said. I rounded up. I estimated. That's not lying. You misrepresented your liquidity by $60,000 and failed to disclose debt. Mr. Pruitt said. That's not rounding up, that's fraud. My father's face crumpled, not with remorse, with rage. You're ungrateful. After everything I've done for you, you stand here in front of all these people and you humiliate me. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you. Something in me went very cold and very still. No, I said. She'd be proud. She spent 14 years planning for this moment. She knew you'd do this. She documented your pattern going back 30 years. She left me $127,000 and a file full of evidence because she wanted me to have the choice she never gave you. The choice to walk away clean. I pulled the glass plaque from the table, held it up. She taught me that my name is my asset. You tried to spend it. It didn't work. I'm still here. My reputation is intact. Your deal is under investigation. That's not my fault. That's yours. I looked at the crowd. 50 people now, maybe 60. Lenders, business owners, people whose respect mattered in this community. I'm not here for revenge, I said. I'm here because I earned this award by doing exactly what my grandmother taught me, by protecting my professional integrity even when family pressure told me not to, by documenting everything, by walking away clean. I looked back at my father. You told me in December I'd regret standing up for myself. You were wrong. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. I turned and walked toward the exit. Marcus and Linda followed. Mr. Pruitt gathered his folder and came with us. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice, quiet and devastated. Richard, what have you done? I didn't hear my father's answer. I was already gone. 3 months later, in March, I visited my grandmother's grave for the first time since the chamber event. The cemetery was quiet. Spring was starting to show in green shoots around the headstones. I brought daffodils, her favorite. I knelt next to the stone. Hey, Grandma. The wind moved through the trees. I won the award, I said. Young Professional Achievement. They gave me a glass plaque with my name on it. You would have liked it. I traced the letters carved in granite. Mildred Ann Caldwell, 1931 to 2012. Beloved mother and grandmother. Dad's deal fell apart, I said. The investigation found enough evidence to void the loan. He had to sell the Michigan house at a loss. Mom filed for separation in February. Delaney moved to Portland and stopped taking his calls. I sat back on my heels. You knew, didn't you? You knew exactly how it would happen. You gave me everything I needed to protect myself. The money, the documentation, the lawyer, even the prediction. You saw him so clearly. A bird called somewhere in the trees. I used some of the money, I said. Put a down payment on a condo. Nothing fancy, just mine. Clean title, no family strings. I'm thinking about getting a cat. Maybe I'll name her Mildred. I smiled, wiped my eyes. Thank you, Little Star's grandma, for seeing what I couldn't, for preparing what I needed, for loving me enough to let me fail until I was ready to stand up. I stayed there for 20 minutes. Then I put the daffodils in the vase and drove home. 10 months after the chamber event, I'm sitting in my condo on a Saturday morning. October light coming through the windows, coffee brewing. A gray tabby cat named Millie curled up on the couch. The glass plaque sits on my bookshelf next to a framed photo of my grandmother. In the photo, she's holding my hand on her porch. I'm wearing the blue cardigan with the missing buttons. She's calling me Little Star. My phone buzzes. A text from Marcus Chen. Client needs documentation review for mixed-use development. Thought of you immediately. Interested? I text back. Send me the preliminary file. I'll take a look. My professional calendar is full through December. My reputation is stronger than it's ever been. 3 lenders have me on retainer. Bob Henriksen recommended me to 2 new firms. My father hasn't contacted me since March. My mother sends occasional emails I don't answer. Delaney called once, drunk, and apologized for not seeing it sooner. I told her I forgave her. I'm not sure if I meant it yet. The money my grandmother left me sits in an account earning interest. I've used $35,000 for the condo. The rest is waiting. Freedom money, walk-away money, integrity protection money. If you're watching this, I want you to understand something. Silence isn't peace. Silence is the price you pay for someone else's comfort. My grandmother knew that. She spent 30 years watching my father weaponize people's reluctance to make a scene. She knew I'd inherit that reluctance. She gave me the tools to overcome it. Walking away from family isn't failure. Walking away is sometimes the only way to protect what matters most: your name, your integrity, your future. I learned that lesson in a parking garage, reading a letter from a woman who loved me enough to prepare for the worst. She gave me permission to choose myself. She gave me proof that choosing myself was the right thing to do. If you've ever had to walk away from someone you love to protect yourself, type "I walked away" in the comments. Or if you chose to stay and fight for your boundaries, type "I stayed and fought." Both are brave. Both are valid. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. And if you're facing a choice like mine, document everything. Protect your name. Walk away clean. Millie stretches on the couch and yawns. I pick up my coffee and look out the window. Snow is starting to fall. Soft, quiet, covering everything in clean white. I watch it from the warm side of the glass.